All righty then. As an American, I am embarrassed for our nation. I am embarrassed for the rest of the world to look at what we're doing when the president is on foreign soil. This will go down as a stain on the House of Representatives. This will mark the nadir of the Democrat Party. The Obama crime spree, continuing on into this, will mark the lowest point in the Democrat Party since their KKK convention of 1924. Not going to spend a lot of time on this. It's not going to be too long a show, but what I want to do is condense the highlights of what happened today, because something very significant happened today. I have had a tremendous amount of respect for Professor Turley from Georgetown University School of Law. He voted for President Clinton twice. He voted for President Obama twice. He voted for Hillary Clinton, and he makes absolutely no bones about the fact that he's been a lifelong Democrat. And he is shocked and appalled at what the Democrat Party is doing, and he as much as called them out on their abuse of power today. He literally used those words, and we're going to get to that in a minute. Jonathan Turley is like most of the professors that I had. Political beliefs, one way or the other. The best professors, you never know which way they lean. But he is fair-minded and even-handed and committed above all else to the rule of law. The Democrat Party has proven over the last year, last 3 years, last 11 years, that they disdain the rule of law. They have contempt for the Constitution, disdain for the rule of law, and they look down on people who they think need to follow the law, whereas they exempt themselves. I said it off the cuff on a show last summer, and it's one of the things that I'm proudest of having come up with. The summer of 18 it was, actually. Commie-crats. They hate you. They hate me. They hate America. I wasn't joking. It wasn't hyperbole. I was spot on. And they proved me right day after day after day. Pass MCA, no can do. Help our seniors out by lowering drug prices, not gonna happen. Do anything for the benefit of America? Yeah, no. Oh, but we can pass a resolution protecting the Bullwinkles in China for human rights violations. One of our witnesses today, because all this was a law school colloquium, okay? This was not testimony. Matt Gaetz nailed it. He said, show of hands, do any of you have any direct knowledge of any piece of evidence related to this inquiry? 4 people sat there sitting on their hands. That should be the beginning of the end of the day's proceedings, but of course it wasn't, because we've got Noah Feldman. Noah Feldman, the Jew who apologizes for Bullwinkles and who wrote a paean, The Fall and Rise of the Islamic State, writes a paean to Sharia. This idiot doesn't realize that his head is first on the chopping block. I want to focus on Professor Turley's commentary today because Noah Feldman, Michael Gerhardt, and whatever that chick's name was that Hillary was going to nominate instead of Kavanaugh, yet another incident in which the Democrat Party showed their disdain for the rule of law, for the president's powers, etc. I want to focus on Professor Turley's comments today, because it was Professor Turley and only Professor Turley who was actually testifying about the law and not about feels and not about Orange Man Bad and not about Cheeto Hitler and not making jokes about the president's 13-year-old son, which was despicable. And First Lady Melania Trump, good on you for calling that hag out on Twitter, on your official Twitter account. Good on you. It's not the, it wasn't evil. It wasn't the most, she was trying to make a clever joke. Our Constitution allows the president to name his son Baron, but it doesn't allow him to make him a baron. Well, the president is not trying to be an emperor. The president is not trying to establish a royal family line of hereditary rule. That was just a cheap shot using a 13-year-old as the punchline. Despicable. Again, not evil, not, anything disgusting or vile, but just low class, because the Democrats are nothing. Even though they're the party of the rich, Democrats are nothing if not low class. And yet they look down on us as being so far beneath them. Well, the president's right. We are the elite, okay? We've gone to better schools. We own better businesses. We employ more people. We are the lifeblood of America. Okay, so let's focus tonight on Professor Turley's commentary. I'm going to read you a few statements, and then I'm going to play a few short videos. I've collected these videos because they're just short segments. I don't want to just play a long video. There's plenty of those that you've seen. If you watched the testimony today, you saw a long testimony. I want to just give you clips so that you can pass this on to your friends who might have missed what happened today and who just want a short précis of what today was all about. So Professor Turley said, proceeding to a vote on this incomplete record is a dangerous precedent to set for this country. Removing a sitting president is not supposed to be easy or fast. It is meant to be thorough and complete. This is neither. This was the central theme of Professor Turley's testimony today. The record is incomplete because there were so many witnesses that were not called, so many questions that were not permitted to be asked of the witnesses that were called, and transcripts that have not been released. So the record is incomplete, and this procedure, this rocket docket, is flying through it, hell-bent for impeachment by Christmas, which, by the way, isn't going to happen. They're putting speed, placing a premium on speed over procedure. Okay, it's the rapidity of these proceedings that matter much more than their substance or the due process provided therein. So he said it's meant to be thorough and complete. This procedure is neither. One of the things that came up today again, Shifty Shift for Brain Shift got 3 Pinocchios from WAPO. Not from Breitbart, not from Hannity, but from Washington Post. Got 3 Pinocchios for saying that the whistleblower has a statutory right to anonymity. No, nowhere in any whistleblower statute, which, by the way, the IG statute doesn't even apply in this. He's not even technically a whistleblower because A, didn't meet the requirements of a whistleblower. B, the president is not subject. Presidential actions are not subject to whistleblower laws. The truth is that the whistleblower should testify to his or her knowledge of key facts. We know it's his. We know who it is. It's Eric Charmella. Judiciary could hold an executive session to protect his identity, although the law doesn't require it. So they could. The law doesn't require it. There's no statutory basis. Schiff was lying. So back to Professor Turley. He said, rather than founding these allegations on clear and recognized definitions, the House has advanced a capacious and novel view of bribery to fit the limited facts. So again, we've only got limited facts here. All the facts point toward the president's innocence, and Democrats are taking and cutting and pasting, and if we take this word and that letter and we turn that letter 90 degrees and we glue it on and we're gonna get, and you look back and you squint one eye, it'll sort of look something like what bribery might be. I mean, that's essentially what the Democrats' core foundation of their case is right there. What I just explained is pretty much the Democrats' legal foundation for impeachment, okay? It's absolute BS. So he's saying that the House has advanced a capacious and novel view of bribery because remember, first we started out with quid pro quo. Oh, but that didn't poll so well, so then we went to bribery. Oh, but then we got blowback because they found out that we submitted that to well, first we went into extortion, and then, no, we pulled extortion. People don't understand extortion, but they understand bribery, so we're going to use bribery. But then it came out that they actually got bribery because they focus grouped it. So then we're back at quid pro quo, none of which exists. Quid pro quo, extortion, bribery, none of them exist. Professor Turley also said, even if the official act were clear, okay, so in order for there to be bribery, you need two things. You need an official act, and you have to have evidence of a corrupt intent. Okay, so not only do you have to do something, but you have to have a corrupt intent for doing that. Not only did the president not do anything, there's no evidence that he had any corrupt intent for not doing what he didn't do. The whole thing is absurd. And yet, you've got Humpty Lumpty out there. The evidence is overwhelming. Yeah, it's overwhelmingly pointing toward the fact that the president didn't do anything impeachable. So Turley said, even if the official act were clear, which it isn't here, any bribery case would collapse on the current lack of evidence of a corrupt intent. He's saying, now, that doesn't mean that you can't impeach a president for bribery, but you have to have an official act and you have to have conclusive evidence of a corrupt intent. We have neither here. You know, is CNN an honest broker? Well, their analyst, their legal analyst and former White House ethics attorney, Norm Eisen, claimed before the release of the Mueller report that the criminal case for collusion was devastating and that Trump is colluding in plain sight. Adam Schiff said, I have incontrovertible evidence of collusion. And none of that was true. It was all made up. It was all a fiction. It was worse than a fiction. It was an outright lie. It was a statement designed to deceive. That is a lie. A statement or an omission designed to deceive. That's all the Democrats have. Okay, so let's listen to Professor Turley here on what the requisite grounds for impeachment need to be.
Obstruction is a crime also with meaning. It has elements. It has controlling case authority. The record does not establish obstruction in this case. That is, what my esteemed colleague said was certainly true. If you accept all of their presumptions, it would be obstruction. But impeachments have to be based on proof, not presumptions. That's the problem when you move towards impeachment on this abbreviated schedule that has not been explained to me. Why you want to set the record for the fastest impeachment.
And there it is again. It's not been explained to him why the Democrats, and he's talking to the Democrats here, it's not been explained to me why you want to set the speed record for the fastest impeachment in history, okay? And I forgot, yeah, we went quid pro quo, but then we briefly went into obstruction before we went in. I forgot obstruction. I knew there was a fourth one, but I forgot obstruction. So it was quid pro quo, and then obstruction, and then extortion, and then bribery, and now they're flirting with quid pro quo, but they're also talking about abuse of power maybe. So there's really 5 if you count abuse of power as a separate one. And we'll get into that in a little bit too, because he had a devastating critique of the Democrat Party with regard to abuse of power.
I can't emphasize this enough, and I'll say it just one more time. If you impeach a president, if you make a high crime and misdemeanor out of going to the courts, it is an abuse of power. It's your abuse of power.
Bam! He's talking to the Democrats. The Democrats are saying that President Trump correctly, legally, and politically correctly standing up for the office of the president. Remember what his oath says, to faithfully execute the laws of the United States of America. To faithfully execute the office of president. Okay, so the office of the President of the United States of America is a legal entity that exists regardless of the occupant of that office. It is every president's responsibility to be a caretaker of that office, of its powers, to not let Congress encroach on those powers. Conversely, it's Congress's job not to let the president encroach on their powers. But that's the dynamic tension between our branches. But what the Democrats are trying to say is that by the president going to the courts, looking for judicial review of requests that have been made ultra vires, outside their power, by Congress. So Congress is asking him for things that the president does not think need to be provided to Congress. Much like Obama, and Professor Turley spoke about this today. I won't play those clips, but Professor Turley spoke about this, about how Obama said, not only am I not going to provide you the information that you requested, I deny your very right to ask for that information regarding Fast and Furious, where they were running guns to Mexican drug cartels, ending up in the death of border agent Terry. He said you can't have it both ways. You know, you either apply the Obama standard or you apply the standard you're applying now, because they're completely different. So, you know, the position that you took during the Obama administration completely refutes the position that you're taking now. And to say that the president, by seeking judicial review, seeking an arbiter of the third branch of government to make a ruling as to whether you have the power to ask for what you're asking for, to call that obstruction of justice, to call that an abuse of power, is an abuse of power, said Professor Turley to the Democrats. It's your abuse of power. He is a Democrat. Clinton, Obama, Hillary. He cares about the rule of law, and he called Humpty Lumpty and the rest of these disgraceful Democrats out, and he said, if you're going to call the president seeking judicial review abuse of power, it is abuse of power. It is your abuse of power. That was the most devastating critique I have ever heard in congressional testimony toward the questioners. All right? He was, and look at his demeanor. The others came off as partisan hacks. That woman from Stanford, thank heaven President Trump won and we don't have her on the Supreme Court. I mean, we think the notorious RBG is bad. We think the incompetent Sotomayor is bad. We think that the corrupt Elena Kagan, who won't recuse herself in cases when she had a direct role in those cases at lower levels when she was with the administration, is bad. That chick would be the worst, okay, of the four of them. So again, Professor Turley keeps coming back to these two themes. The evidence here is too thin and the speed is too fast. Okay, why are the Democrats racing to overturn the will of the American people? Okay, and he provided a little context with regard to the framers. And it's important to listen to what he says about how the framers viewed impeachment.
It has proven to be the case. It's certainly of the two impeachments that we have seen. It's also important to note, by the way, that we often think that our times are unique. You know, this provision wasn't just written for times like ours. It was written in times like ours.
Absolutely. If we think politics are bad today, I told someone this on the phone just the other night. Go back and look at the presidential campaign of 1804. Go back and look at the Jacksonian campaigns. Go back and look at Ma, Where's My Pa? Politics in the 19th century was a blood sport. It was an absolute blood sport. It's tame by comparison now. We think everything is so bad because that's the narcissism of the now, right? When you're living is your problems are bigger than any problems that have been faced by people in history, which is complete bunkum. Okay.
That is, these are people that were even more severe than the rhetoric today. I mean, you have to keep in mind Jefferson referred to the administration of the Federalists as the reign of the witches. So this was not a period where people didn't have the strong feelings. And indeed, when people talk about members of this committee acting like they want to kill each other, back then they were actually trying to kill each other.
We had people whacking other people over the head with canes on the House of Representatives or on the Senate floor. Okay? We had fisticuffs in the halls of Congress back in the 19th century. Again, things today are tame by comparison. If this were the 19th century, you can bet your booty that there would be a throat punch in Shifty Schiff's future.
That's what the sedition law was, is you were trying to kill people that disagreed with you. But what's notable is they didn't have a whole slew of impeachments. They knew not to do it. And I think that that's a lesson that actually can be taken from that period. That the framers created a standard that would not be endlessly fluid and flexible. And that standard has kept us from impeachments despite periods in which we have really despised each other. And that, I think, is the most distressing thing for most of us today, is there's so much more rage than reason.
Amen. And what's the difference between the parties back then that despised each other and the Democrat Party today? The parties back then, neither of them were trying to tear down America, whether it was the Whigs and the Democrats, whether it was the Democrat Republicans, which became the Republicans, or the Federalists, whether it was the Democrats and Republicans of the late 19th century. Neither party was looking to tear down America. We have a party now, again, wasn't kidding. They hate America. They hate you, they hate me, they hate America. Totally not kidding. They want to tear down every cultural norm. They want to tear down football. They want to tear down homecoming, king and queen. Everything has to be gender fluid. Everything, we can't have any religion except for Bullwinkleism, which is a totalitarian political philosophy, not a religion. They want to tear down everything. All they can do is destroy. They cannot build up. They're not interested in building up. They want a quality of misery with themselves perched on top, moving people around a chessboard, okay, with their pockets overflowing with cash while everybody else is scrambling for crumbs. That's the world, the dystopian vision for America that the Democrat Party has. This was another very good bit of testimony here. Professor Turley said, if you can't say the president, you can't say the president is above the law and then say the crimes you accuse him of really don't need to be established. It's like, you can't have it both ways. Either the president's above, the president's above the law. I think this was in the Intelligence Committee. It was put well, and I think it was Representative Collins. I might be wrong about that, but he said the president is neither above the law, but he's also not below the law. Okay, and here the Democrats are trying to put him below the law.
And again, let's go back. I want to go back to something else. And you talked about bribery, and Ms. Chad's going to address a good bit of that. But I want to go back to something that you talked about because it really bothers, I think, the perception out there of what's going on here in the disputed transcript. Being that the call has been laid out there, the president said, "I wanted nothing for this." There's all this exculpatory evidence that was not presented in the last 45 minutes. But there is one thing that's interesting.
Yeah, because we can't have any exculpatory evidence presented. It can only be evidence that, again, if you take this word and then this letter and you turn it 90 degrees and you lean back and you squint one eye, it kind of sort of looks like bribery, right? This is Representative Doug Collins, and noting the fact that there's all this exculpatory evidence, all this evidence that proves that the president didn't do what they are accusing him of doing, but the Democrats refused to allow that testimony to even be put on the record.
It's been reported in the mainstream media, and it goes back to your issue of does crimes matter or what this definition is that House, our majority initially accused the president. They kept saying quid pro quo, and we still hear it as we go through. But then, as reported, they used a political focus group to determine whether the phrase polled well. And apparently it didn't poll well, so they agreed to change their theory of the case to bribery. does that not just feed into more of what you're saying about how we're actually, the crime matters and that facts do matter in a case like it, or at least should matter?
It does. There's a reason why every past impeachment has established crimes. And it's obvious. It's not that you can't impeach on a non-crime. You can. In fact, non-crimes have been part of past impeachments. It's just that they've never gone up alone or primarily as the basis of impeachment. That's the problem here. If you prove a quid pro quo, that you might have an impeachable offense. But to go up only on a non-criminal case would be the first time in history. So why is that the case? The reason is that crimes have an established definition in case law. So there's a concrete, independent body of law that assures the public that this is not just political, that this is a president who did something they could not do. You can't say the president is above the law if you then say the crimes you accuse him of really don't have to be established.
Okay, did you get that? We've got a body of case law that defines what certain crimes are. And so what you're saying with impeachment, which impeachment is primarily a political process. It is not a legal process, even though it has the accoutrement of a legal process. What Professor Turley is saying, you cannot go to the American people and say that we need to remove the president because he committed these crimes. He did things that you wouldn't be allowed to do because of this body of case law that defines what these crimes are. So the body of case law defines what bribery is, defines what extortion is, defines what obstruction of justice is, defines what abuse of power is. We have case law deciding these very questions. And you wouldn't be allowed to do them, but that means we need to not let the president do them. That's what we mean when we say the president is not above the law. But that's not what the Democrats are doing here. The Democrats aren't going to the American public and saying, we need to remove the president because he did something that you wouldn't be allowed to. My goodness, they are the poster children for doing things that we wouldn't be allowed to do it. If we did anything like what they do, we'd be imprisoned for money laundering, for racketeering, for all of their crimes, but they've exempted themselves from those laws. So that's not what's going on here. They're not coming to the American public and saying, the president committed these crimes, the president did things that you would go to jail for, therefore we need to remove him from the office, and we might need to criminally prosecute him after he's removed from office, okay? Do you notice Professor Turley's mien? His demeanor, the tone of his voice. He's not Blasey Ford. And I had to put in a separate front door because I get claustrophobic and I was just so, I get so, if I'm in a room with only one exit, it's just, He's not like that Harridan that testified next to him this morning. He wasn't like that jaboni Feldman who thinks that Bullwinkle rights are better than our constitutional rights. He's calm, he's measured, he's incredibly interesting, he's unbelievably bright. This is one of the brightest men on constitutional law that I've ever had the privilege to listen to. The Dersh is good, he has a thorough knowledge, but Professor Turley, I would absolutely invite him to a dinner party. He would be a fascinating dinner party guest. Not just to talk about the law, and not just to pick his brain, although I'd love to do that, just the manner in which he presents his knowledge. He's not condescending and supercilious. He's not snarky. He's not trying to score cheap political points. He really went to the House today, to the Judiciary Committee, to lay out what the law says about impeachment. He went there today as a professor, not trying to carry water for the Democrats on the committee, but actually trying to explain to the American public what was going on, what shenanigans were being pulled or attempted to be pulled, and what it should be. Okay, he was incredibly interesting to listen to. I learned a lot just by listening to what I did hear him say today. And this is the kind of Democrat that I grew up with. My cousins ran the Democrat Party of Syracuse. I worked, I campaigned for my cousin Tom for mayor. And it's because they were Democrats like this, Democrats that care about the rule of law, Democrats that love this country. We just had a different political, I got to see both parties when I was a kid, and I realized the Democrats are pretty much just using politics as a way to get their friends jobs. And the Republicans actually just want to keep the government off of people's back. And I figured I could get a job on my own. I didn't need Democrats to get me a job. And I'd really rather have the government off my back. And then I realized, oh, we're a republic, not a democracy. And it was locked. I'm a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. Although I'm a registered conservative, I have a lot of issues with the Republican Party, as we have discussed. But it was Democrats like Jonathan Turley that I grew up with, that I respect. I can respect an honest difference of opinion. He might have a different approach towards taxation than I have, but he's someone who's reasonable, who would listen to arguments, and with whom I could compromise so that we could both walk away with half a loaf, right? Jonathan Turley is the kind of Democrat that we need more of. We need less Talibabas. We need less incest Omars. We need fewer Talibabas, fewer incest Omars, fewer AOCs, and we need more people in the Congress like Jonathan Turley. It'd be nice if we had even one Democrat in the Congress like Jonathan Turley. Alas, we do not. This was good. Mr. Trudeau had a good point today. Let's listen to him talk, Chabot. Let's listen to him talking about Shifty Schiff.
It would seem that since Schiff, for example, misled the American people on multiple occasions, common sense and basic fairness would call for Schiff to be questioned about.
Absolutely. Since Shifty Schiff lied to the American people on numerous repeated occasions on multiple issues, remember, I have conclusive evidence of collusion. Yeah, you didn't. Liar. The whistleblower has a statutory right to anonymity. Yeah, no, he doesn't. Liar. So Steve Chabot from Ohio nailed it. It seems, since we've got a guy with a long and detailed track record of lying to the American public, it seems only reasonable that we'd have him here to be questioned, and yet Humpty Lumpty will not allow him to be called to be questioned. Yet again, denying the Republicans any say in the proceedings. Now, here's Jim Jordan. And I love this guy. He's like, he should have gone to Boston University instead of Ohio State University, because he's not a chocolate-covered peanut butter candy. He is a terrier. Let's listen.
The facts are on the president's side. 4 key facts: will not change, have not changed, will never change. We have the transcript. There was no quid pro quo on the transcript. The two guys on the call, President Trump and President Zelensky, both said no pressure, no pushing, no quid pro quo. The Ukrainians, third, didn't know that the aid was held up at the time of the phone call. And fourth, and most important, Ukrainians never started, never promised to start, and never announced an investigation in the time that the aid was paused.
Bam! 4 facts. Have not changed, will not change. We got the transcript, no quid pro quo. The 2 principals on the call, President Trump and President Zelensky, said no quid pro quo. The aid was released, and while the aid was paused, no investigation was started, no announcement of an investigation was started. And I'll even go one further and say we've got 5 facts in that 4 meetings occurred between the United States government and the Ukraine government while the aid was paused and afterward, before the Ukrainians knew that it had been paused, and even after they knew it had been paused and before it had been released. In none of those 4 meetings did the aid even come up as a topic, completely blowing the Democrats' allegations out of the water. Representative Ratcliffe from Texas did a great job today. Let's listen to what his questioning of Professor Turley was. If I were to summarize your testimony, Representative Ratcliffe said, no bribery, no extortion, no obstruction of justice, no abuse of power. Is that fair? And Professor Turley said, not on this record.
To do it. So if I were to summarize your testimony, no bribery, no extortion, no obstruction of justice, no abuse of power. Is that fair?
Not on this record.
Bam! Not on this record. You got nothing here, kids. Turley's sitting here saying, you don't have the record, you don't have a sufficient legal foundation to even contemplate impeachment. And number two, you're rushing this thing through so ridiculously fast with such an unbelievable lack of due process rights for the president that the whole thing is just nakedly political. And he likened it to the impeachment of Andrew Johnson, which was purely political. What the Democrats are trying to do is to say Trump was a criminal, but Bill Clinton wasn't. Bill Clinton was impeached for political reasons, but Trump is actually being impeached for crimes, when the reality, remember, they live in bizarro America. Up is down, left is right, and right is wrong in their world, right? Bill Clinton actually did commit crimes. He actually did perjure himself. Under oath, lied. Crime. High crime, misdemeanor, perjury is a high crime. Perjury is a felony. Okay? And he committed, I think they also had an article of impeachment for obstruction of justice. Donald Trump hasn't done any of those things. Donald Trump has not committed a crime. As Professor Turley pointed out, we've got a body of criminal law that defines what crimes are, and the president hasn't done anything that matches up with that body of law. And here was Matt Gaetz from Florida today, just nailing, Pamela Karlan and the rest of them. Professor Turley simply because he was on the panel, but he wasn't trying to embarrass Professor Turley. He was just trying to point out that all of them were there to engage in a law school colloquium, not in testimony per se.
To all of the witnesses, if you have personal knowledge of a single material fact in the Schiff report, please raise your hand. And let the record reflect no personal knowledge of a single fact. And you know what? That continues on the tradition that we saw from Madam Schiff.
Bam. Nobody knows anything. Nobody spoke to the president. None of the witnesses had spoken to the president, except for Ambassador Sondland, whose testimony was that the president said, when Sondland yelled at him, "What do you want?" the president yelled back, "I don't want anything. No quid pro quo. I want him to do what he was elected to do. Do his job." And of course, CNN comes out and says Sondland confirms quid pro quo. I mean, again, a blatant lie to the American public. And this is the real danger. Why am I even wasting any time on this instead of just dismissing it? Because I want to lay out what they're doing and point out how dangerous it was, or how dangerous it is to the republic. Okay, they are using the impeachment process because Orange Man bad. He hadn't even taken the oath of office and they were talking about impeachment. Only 19 minutes passed since he took the oath of office, and WAPO's out with an article talking about impeaching him. Okay, this has never been about anything that the president did. It's never been anything about anything that the president failed to do. This entire Russia collusion investigation, FISA warrant abuse, this impeachment farce, it all boils down to one thing and one thing only, and that is Orange Man bad. He wasn't supposed to win, and he hurts our feels. Let's listen.
Professor Turley, I want to direct these first few questions to you. The other three witnesses have identified this amorphous standard for impeaching a president. They've said that if a president abuses his power for personal or political gain, it's impeachable conduct. You agree with me?
Not the way it's been stated. In fact, there's so many different standards.
I got a long ways to go here.
Well, there's been so many different standards. One of them was attempting to abuse office.
Okay.
I'm not even sure how to recognize that, let alone define it.
So let me go with a few examples and see if you agree with me. Lyndon Johnson directed the Central Intelligence Agency to place a spy in Barry Goldwater's campaign. That spy got advanced copies of speeches and other strategy, delivered that to the Johnson campaign. Would that be impeachable conduct according to the other panelists?
Oh, it speaks pretty broadly, so I assume so.
How about when President Johnson put a wiretap on Goldwater's campaign plane? Would that be for political benefit?
Well, I can't exclude anything under that definition.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with a few other presidents. We'll see where we go. Congressman Deutsch just informed us that FDR put country first. Now, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when he was president, directed the IRS to conduct audits of his political enemies, namely Huey Long, William Randolph Hearst, Hamilton Fish, Father Coughlin. Would that be an abuse of power for political benefit according to the other panelists? Would that be impeachable conduct?
I think it all would be subsumed into it.
How about when President Kennedy directed his brother, Robert Kennedy, to deport one of his mistresses as an East German spy? Would that qualify as impeachable conduct?
Once again, I can't exclude it.
And how about when he directed the FBI to use wiretaps on congressional staffers who opposed him politically? Would that be impeachable conduct?
It seemed to be falling within it.
And let's go to Barack Obama. When Barack Obama directed or made a finding that the Senate was in recess and appointed people to the National Labor Relations Board and lost 9-0, Ruth Bader Ginsburg voted against the president on this issue. Would that be an abuse of power?
I'm afraid you have to direct it to others, but I don't see any exclusions under their definition.
Okay.
Okay, so that was Ken Buck from Colorado doing a great job of laying out the fact that the other three panelists, you know, the three stooges, I'll call them, because today we had three stooges and then we had an actual law professor. I pity the people at Harvard and at with Feldman and at Stanford Law School. These are good law schools, top law schools, and these professors just embarrassed their law schools tremendously. And, Georgetown has done very well by hiring someone like Jonathan Turley. And what he did is he laid out various presidents, which, FDR telling the IRS to audit Hamilton Fish, Father Coughlin, Huey Long, William Randolph Hearst, Johnson ordering a CIA agent to infiltrate Goldwater's campaign, putting a wiretap on Goldwater's airplane, Obama using, declaring a recess and then appointing people to the National Labor Relations Board, actions which were overturned by the Supreme Court 9-0, as Representative Buck alluded. And he was putting out all of those, would these be considered impeachable offenses under the nebulous, broad, capacious standard that the three stooges just laid out? And Professor Turley is like, yeah, everything fits. I can't see any exclusions. Meaning, according to their standard, the one they want to use, you could impeach a president because you didn't like his choice of toothpaste. And again, Mike Johnson from Louisiana focused on the danger, the existential threat to this whole, to our noble experiment in self-governance, the existential threat that the Democrats' actions pose to our system of government.
One of the critical presuppositions and foundations of a self-governing people in a constitutional republic is that they will maintain a basic level of trust in their institutions, in the rule of law, in the system of justice, in the body of elected representatives, their citizen legislators in the Congress. The greatest danger of this fraudulent impeachment production is not what happens this afternoon or by Christmas or in the election next fall. The greatest danger is what this will do in the days ahead to our 243-year experiment in self-governance. What effect this foolish new president, this Pandora's box, will have upon our beleaguered nation 6 or 7 years from now, a decade from now. in the ruins of public liberty that are being created by this terribly short-sighted exercise today. God help us.
God help us indeed. The Democrats, again, this is scorched earth. They don't care what they tear down as long as they tear down. Orange Man bad. Cheeto Hitler. He hurt my feels. Hillary was supposed to win. No! You know, and they do. They pose an existential threat to our government, to the confidence that the American people and people around the world have in our government. Now, think about this. If people around the world lose faith in the United States government, the stability of the United States government, that's going to make the United States a less attractive place for foreign investment, for foreign money to come in and invest in us. That's going to be a less attractive place for people to put their money with us. You know, we're going to be treated like a banana republic. It's going to harm us economically. If we fail to maintain a stable political structure, if we fail to preserve the faith in our institutions, the integrity of our political institutions, it is going to harm this country irrevocably. And that is exactly what they want, because they hate America. And that's not me spouting off. Their every action proves that they hate America. Louis Gohmert knocked it out of the park. Let's listen.
We need some factual witnesses. We do not need to receive a report that we don't have a chance to read before this hearing. We need a chance to bring in actual fact witnesses.
Bam! If you want to have a hearing to elicit testimony, to build a record sufficient to impeach a president, you don't do that by issuing a report before anybody can even read it, before the hearing, and then you have a bunch of law professors come in and talk about what their theory of the law is without any substantive case law to support their opinions, and no facts elicited, so we don't even have a factual record. Louis was, as always, directly over target. Representative Martha Roby from Alabama followed up along that line of thinking.
That I'd like to make. Of course, the United States House of Representatives has initiated impeachment inquiries against the President of the United States only 3 times in our nation's history prior to this one. Those impeachment inquiries were done in this committee, the Judiciary Committee, which has jurisdiction over impeachment matters. Here, in 2019, under this inquiry, fact witnesses have been called. Fact witnesses that have been called were in front of the Intelligence Committee. We have been given no indication that this committee will conduct substantive hearings with fact witnesses. As a member serving on the Judiciary Committee, I can say that the process in which we are participating is insufficient, unprecedented, and grossly inadequate. Statement that I'd like to make.
Okay, what she's saying is impeachment is the province of the Judiciary Committee. And now what the Democrats want to do is say, you know, we really don't need any fact witnesses because the fact witnesses all testified over in the Intelligence Committee, and we'll just get a report of what they found. Meanwhile, no fact witnesses in the Intelligence Committee reported any facts that anybody had any direct knowledge of. It was all supposition, conjecture, and inference. Okay, so this is literally a fact-devoid process. You've got one committee eliciting no facts and substituting opinion, conjecture, supposition, and inference for facts. And then you've got the other committee, Judiciary, relying on the non-fact report put out by the Intelligence Committee. So neither committee is going to call fact witnesses that can actually provide factual testimony. The whole thing is an absolute farce. And guess who agrees? That's right, Professor Turley.
Is not that abuse of power can never be an impeachable offense. You just have to prove it, and you haven't. It's not enough to say, I infer this what...
Oh, we lost sound.
And you haven't. It's not enough to say, I infer this was the purpose. I infer that this is what was intended, when you're not actually subpoenaing people with direct knowledge. And instead you're saying we must vote in this rocket docket of an impeachment.
Okay? And again, he's saying you gotta have the goods. If you're gonna impeach a president, you gotta have the goods. Where's the beef? To use a 1980s ad jingle or ad slogan. There's no beef here. This is a nothing burger from start to finish. And again, we have Representative Andy Biggs from Arizona hammering home the fact that we had a law school colloquium with 3 stooges and 1 actual law professor today, but none of them were fact witnesses. Let's listen to what Representative Biggs had to say.
What I'm suggesting to you today is a reckless bias coming in here. You're not fact witnesses. You're supposed to be talking about what the law is, but you came in with a preconceived notion and bias.
And he was talking there to the 3 stooges, not to Professor Turley, who actually, despite the fact that he has personal political feelings, clearly was not biased in his presentation. And then we had Representative McClintock from California pointing out that the Democrats, again, because they live in bizarro America, instead of innocent until proven guilty, they want a legal standard where the president must provide evidence of his innocence. Well, you cannot prove a negative.
Good answer, sir.
Professor Turley, this impeachment inquiry has been predicated on some rather disturbing legal doctrines. One Democrat asserted that hearsay can be much better evidence than direct evidence. Speaker Pelosi and others have said that the president's responsibility is to present evidence to prove his innocence. Chairman Schiff's asserted, and we heard a discussion from some of your colleagues today, that if you invoke legal rights in defense of criminal accusations, ipso facto, that's an obstruction of justice and evident.
Good answer, sir.
Yeah, and you know, that's what they're trying to do. If you try to present your own legal case, the Democrats are trying to say that that's obstruction of justice. It's absolutely absurd. It is not the president's job to provide evidence of his innocence. It is the Democrats' job to provide evidence of his guilt. And then just closing the loop, we have Representative Debbie Lasko from Arizona.
Absolutely not. You and House Democrat leadership are tearing apart the country. You said the evidence needs to be clear. It is not. You said offenses need to be grave. They are not. You said that once the evidence is laid out, that the opposition will admit they had to do it. That has not happened. In fact, polling and the fact that not one single Republican voted on the impeachment inquiry resolution or on the Schiff report reveal the opposite is true.
And again, the opposite is always true because they live in bizarro America.
In fact, what you and your Democratic colleagues have done is opposite of what you said had to be done. This is a partisan impeachment, and it is tearing the country apart. I take this all to mean that Chairman Nadler, along with the rest of the Democratic caucus, is prepared to continue these entirely partisan, unfair proceedings and traumatize the American people, all for a political purpose.
And that's all this is. The whole thing, we know it is just an absolute joke. Okay? The Republicans have repeatedly asked questions that have not been allowed, have repeatedly asked for witnesses that have been not been allowed to be called, and then the testimony started to get interesting. Okay, because why was the hold put on the military aid? 2 reasons. First, we had to make sure that the Zelensky team was the real deal and that they weren't going to be as corrupt as the predecessors. And secondly, the president's sick and tired of America being played for a chump. Okay, he said, how come you don't pay more to Angela? And they said, because we know you'll pay it. He's like, yeah, no, not anymore. OMB, Office of Management and Budget, did testify before the Intelligence Committee to that effect, that no, there were several requests about how much other countries were paying, how much we were paying versus how much other countries were paying. The fact evidence supports the president, not the Democrats. And Representative Guy Reschenthaler went there today.
There is no evidence that the president directed anyone to tell the Ukrainians that aid was conditioned on investigation. Aside from the mere presumptions by Ambassador Sondland, there is no evidence that Trump was conditioning aid on investigation. And if you doubt me, just go back to the actual transcript, because never in that call was the 2020 election mentioned, and never in that call was military aid mentioned. In fact, President Trump told Senator Johnson on 31 August that aid was not conditioned on investigation. Rather, President Trump was rightfully skeptical about the Ukrainians. Their country has a history of corruption, and he merely wanted the Europeans to contribute more to a problem in their own backyard.
And there you have it. Simple as that. Twofold. Got to make sure they're not corrupt. Got to make sure that the Europeans are pulling their own weight. Representative Armstrong from the Rough Rider state of North Dakota, he got right into the heart of the matter. Let's listen.
So we have the alleged victim of quid pro quo, bribery, extortion, whatever we're dealing with now today, repeatedly and adamantly shouting from the rooftops that he never felt pressure, that he was not the victim of anything. So in order for this whole thing to stick, we have to believe that President Zelensky is a pathological liar.
Bam, and it's as simple as that. Again, the 4 facts, and I would say 5 facts because we've got that 5th fact that I added, that have not changed, will not change, cannot change, are that no quid pro quo was ever mentioned in the conversation, and that neither President Trump nor President Zelensky ever felt pressure. The president didn't say anything, and President Zelensky never felt pressured. And again, my 5th fact was, in none of the 4 high-level meetings between the two governments was the military aid even raised. Both when it was suspended and after, when the Ukrainians learned that it had been suspended. So even after they learned that the aid had been temporarily paused, it wasn't denied, it was paused, it was suspended, it still wasn't a topic of conversation. And finally, what this whole thing boils down to was laid out perfectly by Representative Greg Stube of freshman representative.
January of this year, and on the only been in Congress since January of this year, and on the very first day of my swearing in, a Democrat in my class called for the impeachment of the president on day 1, using much more colorful language than I would have.
Yeah, we're going to impeach the MFer. Remember that? Yeah, Tali Baba. She and the rest of the squad need to go. These Democrats need to be held up to ridicule. We need to have an absolute electoral bloodbath next year. That's what we're going to be focusing on with MAGA Institute. That's what Patriot Uprising is going to be focusing on. That's what I know all of you will be focusing on. But we need to not just be talking about it online. Remember, the whole digital warrior thing is complete BS. What we need to be doing is getting out, volunteering in local campaigns. We need to be participating in get out the vote drives, making sure that people get to the polls. Take a friend. Make sure you have another friend. Take 2 more friends. Okay? We've got to take this thing because, again, we know that the cheating is going to be rampant. We know that they're going to pull out every trick in the book. They're going to they're going to stifle our voices on social media. Meanwhile, they're going to let Google swing 6 to 11 million votes, or 6 to 10 million votes, which again, a leftist that supported Hillary Clinton said that. It wasn't a Republican that said that. It was a leftist that supported Hillary Clinton said that Google tweaking its algorithm by stifling results that were favorable toward President Trump swung 6 to 10 million votes in Hillary's favor. And then they have the audacity to talk about the popular vote between the cheating and in the actions by Google, which I argue should constitute a campaign contribution, because it is something of 6 to 10 million votes is definitely something of political value, and that should gain an investigation by the Federal Election Commission. There's a lot more to come. We're a long way from November 2020. Glad to have you with us. Appreciate you all. Appreciate you liking on Facebook and liking the posts on Facebook. Please don't use the angry and the sad emoji. We've been over this 100 times. I still see people doing it. I'm just going to assume that you're a troll at this point and block you. Don't be doing that. Also, please like these videos on YouTube. It really helps me out if you like it on YouTube. Okay, and make sure your notifications are set on so you get notified when I am live. If I do happen to lose the YouTube channel, because we know that that is a danger, we know that they're shutting people down, I built this channel specifically contemplating that. I wanted a channel where I wouldn't be shut down. So I'm using the Boxcaster. Facebook's rules are, the reason I don't stream live to Facebook anymore is because if you stream live to Facebook, they do not let you simultaneously stream live to your own website, to Twitter, to YouTube, etc. So I said, screw Facebook. So I'll post the links to Facebook, but just liking the post on Facebook really doesn't help that much. What really helps is if you go into YouTube and you like it on YouTube. Greatly appreciate that, because I've got, I think, 1,200 subscribers now, but I'm only getting a dozen or so, half a dozen or so likes on these videos. So if you can always remember when you watch the video, if you please hit that like button, it helps out tremendously. All right, that's all I've got for you tonight. Until next time, God bless you. God bless these United States. Keep fighting the good fight.